Since I was a child, I was fascinated by science fiction, especially Star Trek. The worlds that it portrayed and the things that I've seen, like teleportation, food replicator, faster than light travel. Today, all deemed impossible, but there in Star Trek depicted as being possible, achievable, and the possibilities it inspired stayed with me up until now. As I grew older, I got interested in computers and in programming, which led me to pursue a degree in computer science. This education not only taught me how to think like an engineer, but also how to solve complex problems. And as my expertise grew in this field, so did my interest in solving real-world problems. By taking everything apart, I tried to find out how everything works. I had to get behind it. I had to find out how these impossible concepts at Star Trek work, and I had to find out that they do not work and that they need to be considered as impossible, at least as of now. There are just too many practical problems in the way of making them possible today. So something had happened to me. This engineering mindset somehow replaced my fascination with the impossible. And so I was eager to engage with all these real-world problems, and this was suddenly my driving force behind my view on the future. It suddenly looked complex, uncertain, full of problems and challenges. But hey, I was becoming an engineer, so maybe I could help with some of those problems. Later in my studies, and thanks to a friend who at that time had an internet TV company, yes, that time, I had the opportunity to join him on Star Trek conventions as his cameraman, attending panels, press conferences, meeting all the actors and producers, a dream come true. And at one of these conferences, in a Q&A session, someone got up and asked the following question. I see that you're beaming people around from place to place. How does that work? And I was sitting there with my engineering mindset thinking, yes, this is exactly my question, because I know that there are practical problems that make this impossible, so I was curious to hear what the answer is. So one of the producers said, it works well, don't you see it in the show? And I was like, could it be that easy? And somehow this answer stuck with me ever since. Somehow, for me, this was more than just this funny moment at a conference, but it would inform me how I would look at the future and how I would tackle problems going forward. Over time, I understood the importance of envisioning the future first, imagining its stories and learning about its implications. And suddenly, when looking at the present from the future, I was able to see the present in a different light. So suddenly the future was not this scary, frightening monster anymore, but it became exciting again. And I was eager to explore the new and the unknown. As I was starting to develop my first truly new ideas, I realized something very quickly. Coming up with new ideas or novelty in general is not that easy. And maybe even harder to communicate these new ideas to other people who are not involved in the thought process. These ideas are made for a future world. They do not fit into our current understanding of the world, and therefore we sometimes think of them as being impossible, useless, or maybe even frightening. Our sense of reality just doesn't allow them. And when an idea seems like this, is when we should start questioning our own misconceptions about the world. And so what I learned next is to truly explore the future in a more holistic way. And to really find new opportunities, we maybe have to look at them from two different directions. So on the one hand, we can go ahead and start in the present and walk forward in time by just engaging with traditional foresight and forecasting methods. Here we can work fact-based, we can look at historical data, we can ask clients, customers, or people in general, we can ask experts, And all of these things will basically solidify what we already know. The opportunities and solutions that we find often seem feasible and logical, and they solve real problems. And because they are grounded in our current reality, they also give us a level of certainty, and we all like that. There is a but, though. When extrapolating the future from the present by, for example, making existing things bigger, better, faster, cheaper, or more sustainable, this is often not how the future works. And I brought an example with me that maybe highlights this a little bit better. What we see here is how people in the year 1900 imagined mail delivery in the year 2000. And I think we all would agree that the year 2000 didn't look like this. And also the year 1990 didn't look like this, and the year 1980, 70, and so on and so forth. So what we see here is the year 1900. Every element that you see in this illustration was already existing in 1900. We also see the role models, fashion, building styles, smoke coming out of the chimney, and so on and so forth. Let's jump 50 years ahead and see what happened. Welcome to the space age and jet age and James Bond. This flying apparatus from the earlier picture was now replaced by a jetpack. But also here, I would think that we would all agree that the year 2000 didn't look like this. This illustration also suffers from exactly the same problems. So let's jump ahead to 2024 and what many of our visions of the future today look like. And I'm pretty sure that you will recognize most of the elements here because the same thing happens. Everything we see here and what these future visions usually portray are elements that exist. Augmented reality, flying cars, drones, and so on and so forth. So this is not how the future works when we try to extrapolate it from the present. We need to acknowledge that what hinders effective visionary thinking is focusing on the present and its current limitations. There will inevitably be new inventions and new discoveries that will make things possible and will change our complete view of what is achievable in the future. We need to turn this around for the second way of how we can look at this. So we can start in the future. So what if we had a tool that can revolutionize our way of looking at the future? The good thing is we all already have it. It's called our sense of possibility. It's especially strong in children, and as we grow older, it often fades to the background. But this is a sense that allows us to look at the future in a completely different way. Through it, everything that is might just as well be thought of differently. When we use our sense of possibility, we tap into our imagination. We do not use our expert knowledge or specialist knowledge. We become inventors. All the opportunities and ideas that we find by applying our sense of possibility contrast the ideas that we find through going forward in time through the traditional forecasting methods. They are of a completely different nature. Now, this way of looking at the future forms the foundation of future archaeology, which is an approach to futures thinking at the intersection of humanity, imagination, art, and design. Here, curiosity, creativity, and courage are our main drivers. Future archaeology looks at the future as an uncharted territory, ripe for exploration and discovery, much like an archaeological field. It allows us to venture forth without the limitation of existing problems. It allows us to find new things and new ideas and to go beyond boundaries and the limitations of the present. As a future archaeologist, you speculate about the world of tomorrow by dreaming it into existence today, by constantly asking yourself what-if questions and always trying to maintain a sense of awe and wonder. One day you might dig over here, and the next day you might dig over here with your imagination, which would be the equivalent of exploring multiple futures. Future archaeology is a conceptual approach to futures thinking, highlighting the importance of looking at multiple potential futures and not being bound by the likelihood of any specific scenario based on current trends. Unlike with a crystal ball, the future archaeologist does not try to predict the future. In future archaeology, what you want to do is to try to stay away from saying this or that will happen or must happen, but invites us to have a conversation about what might, could, or maybe should happen. I think it is worth it to reawaken our sense of possibility again and combine it with the traditional foresight methods to truly unlock the future. I believe that it is worth it to be excited by new ideas again instead of being afraid of them. Future archaeology seamlessly complements the traditional foresight methods without conflicting with them. So let's all be curious and be bold, and let's all work together on a brighter future. Thank you.